and welcome to Global News Today, bringing you exclusive interviews with leading experts every weekday here on Arabiya English. I'm Tom Burges Watson. Coming up today, we're going to be taking a look ahead to the next year in US politics and asking our panel of guests what lies ahead and how 2026 might shape up. Hello, and thank you very much indeed for joining us. Today, we're turning our eye to the United States and looking ahead to what the political calendar might have in store during the year 2026. Well, midterm elections are now less than a year away, and as 2025 started drawing to a close, we got a few early glimpses of what some of the 2026 campaign lines might look like. Well, in his pre-holiday speech, President Trump defended his record. He also promised that the US economy would be even stronger next year. Well, according to polls, Americans are worried about the cost of living and inflation. But on that note, the president said the best is yet to come.
This historic trend will continue. Already, I've secured a record-breaking $18 trillion of investment into the United States, which means jobs, wage increases, growth, factory openings, and far greater national security. Much of this success has been accomplished by tariffs. My favorite word, tariffs, which for many decades have been used successfully by other countries against us, but not anymore. Companies know that if they build in America, there are no tariffs, and that's why they're coming home to the USA in record numbers. They're building factories and plants at levels we haven't seen, AI, automobiles. We're doing what nobody thought was even possible, not even remotely possible. There has never, frankly, been anything like it. 1 year ago, our country was dead. We were absolutely dead. Our country was ready to fail, totally failed. Now, we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. And that's said by every single leader that I've spoken to over the last 5 months.
Okay, President Trump speaking there in his pre-holiday address. Well, to discuss what the year might have in store, I'm joined by Angie Wong, Republican strategist who joins us from Miami, Florida. Welcome to the program, Angie. We're also joined by Greg Swenson, chair of Republicans Overseas. He joins us from Washington. Greg, let me start with you, because looking forwards, I mean, it's pretty clear, isn't it? Politically speaking, the midterms in November 2026 are going to be the big political story of the year. Now, for people who don't know, obviously, control of Congress is at stake in the midterms, and this is going to be the first major electoral test of President Trump's second term. Can the Republican Party hold on to the House and or the Senate?
It's possible, Tom. I think the Republicans will definitely hold the Senate. The map is pretty favorable for the party right now. It's the House that I worry about because historically the party out of power always picks up seats, and the Democrats only have to pick up 3 or 4 seats to flip the House. So historically, it's a big challenge. However, if the economy continues to turn around and we see real wage growth in 2026, the Republicans have a shot. George W. Bush won and picked up seats in 2002 midterms. Bill Clinton picked up seats in the 98 midterms. So it can be done, but I do think you have to have a robust economy and an increase in real wage growth in order for the Republicans to hold the House.
Okay, Angie, what are your thoughts? I mean, to hold on to the House and the Senate, it's going to be all about the economy. Do you agree with that?
Well, I certainly agree with Greg on his assessment. It's going to be the big buzzword, which is affordability and not growth. And I think President Trump needs to understand that. He wants to grow the economy. He wants to grow the United States, grow manufacturing. It's actually more about sustaining what we have and making things more affordable. I think that's where the message is. But also, I think holding on to the House, you know, I was very optimistic even just a few weeks ago, but after having to survive the Miami mayoral election and the New York election, New Jersey, Virginia, I'm not calling them losses because they're already blue-ish anyway, if you really look at the data. But I am a little bit worried because right now, Democrat donors are engaged. They found a winning strategy, and that is with affordability, with really kind of like hopeful candidates. And we just don't have that as much on our side, which is why Susie Wiles, House, President Trump's chief of staff has said, well, President Trump's going to be on the ballot for the midterms. I laughed at that because she, jokingly, we're even saying, well, maybe candidates should legally change their last names to Trump to win. And I think we're going to see a lot more Trump rallies taking place. He's certainly going to start his domestic tour. So I'm really hopeful because I think that's going to hold on to the current seats that we have. I would like to see a bigger majority. I would love to see the redistricting effort really take off. I know here in Florida, we're looking at 3 to 5 Republican seats that we could probably gain through a mid-decade redistricting. So we're going to try to push all of those things forward to guarantee President Trump a full 4-year presidency.
Okay, Greg, I mean, we heard there about the Democrats and, they're obviously slightly in the wilderness after the last elections and they don't have a leader, which is perfectly normal at this stage in the electoral cycle. But do you think they're likely in 2026 to start finding their way?
I'm not sure that they'll find their way that quickly because they are really divided right now between the progressive left, the sort of Marxist progressive left versus the more moderate traditional Democrats. It's really difficult, to really sort out how that settles in the next year. But I do think it's the following year when you get into the presidential campaign after the midterms. So, call it November and December of 26, you'll start to see some candidates emerge for the presidential race in 28. And the Democrats always do well with younger candidates who kind of come out of nowhere. JFK in 1960, Bill Clinton in the early 90s and 92, as well as Barack Obama, all in their 40s, by the way. They obviously failed with President Biden, who was the oldest president of all time. So the formula that works for them is probably going to be someone we don't even know about right now.
Right, that's quite striking for people who don't live in America, that a candidate can be identified and groomed up for, potentially the top job in such a short space of time. I mean, anyone you've got your eye on? I mean, I know that you're a Republican strategist, Angie, but I mean, are there any rising stars in the ranks of the Democrats, someone that might be a bit of a threat?
Oh, there are many. I mean, you already see who's jumping in the race. But all of this is just the prep work for who actually ends up being on the ballot. So you see Senator Mark Kelly trying to jump in the race by going completely against Trump. You see Gavin Newsom. But are there any surprises? Oh, absolutely. I see a lot of rising stars, even Zoran Mandani. When AOC goes for perhaps a Senate seat or the presidency, there was a poll that came out yesterday here in the U.S. where she would win over J.D. Vance by 2 points. So certainly Mondani has a bright future. I didn't like him on the campaign trail because of the words coming out of his mouth, but he is very electable and he definitely energizes the Democrat Party. Republicans, we need to do better. We need to find brighter stars. We need to find younger people with hopeful messages. That is, something that I would love the GOP to start investing in a lot more, because we are in the shadows of 2028 right now. And given the recent, PR wins, I'm going to call them the mayoral wins for Democrats, their donors are completely engaged and energized again. And we were hoping to cut off the money pipeline going into the DNC, but that was just very temporary. It seems like there's money flowing in again. So right now there's a battle within the Democrats, which is kind of the far left kind of progressives, kind of the socialism / communism party, and also now just like the establishment DNC, which is like the Chuck Schumers of the world. So, that split, the one thing I'll give to Democrats over and over again is even though they are divided, when it comes to voting, they come together. I wish Republicans would do more of that.
Greg, what are your thoughts? I mean, just picking up on what Angie was saying there and sort of looking to 2028, because it seems like a long way off. And yeah, it isn't really, isn't it? It's only sort of one electoral cycle away, with the midterms being the next one. What are your thoughts as to who might emerge as being a threat or a challenger to the GOP?
Well, I think a lot of eyes are on Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, and he was on the short list for vice president for Kamala Harris. And, I think he's got a few advantages. He's a he's definitely a swing state governor, which is important. He's a Midwestern governor. And just the fact that he's a governor, typically, executives do well as presidents. You don't see a lot of senators or congressmen have great success as presidents. It's usually executives who have run states before, and it doesn't even have to be a big state. Bill Clinton was the governor of Arkansas, and Reagan. I think about Ronald Reagan, George W. All governors of big states, California and Texas, respectively. So I think Josh Shapiro. You do hear some chatter about Gretchen Whitmer, but I think her record is really checkered, and I think she'd have a real difficulty appealing to the moderate Democrats in the campaign. So the only person I could think of right now that stands out, I don't think it would be Governor Newsom. His track record in California is horrible. He's tried his best to wreck that state, and so you have to look at someone who's a governor of a Midwestern state who can distance themselves from the Biden debacle. Anybody involved with the Biden White House is out. So I think, again, Josh Shapiro is probably the one that comes to mind most for me.
Okay, Greg, just staying with you, because we haven't touched on the economy with you. We spoke about it with Angie. But, I mean, between now and November, clearly what happens in the economy is going to determine, in many ways, isn't it, what the outcome of the midterms is. Do you think the majority of US households will be feeling better off by the autumn?
They will, because we're seeing it already. The average real wages, wages adjusted for inflation in the Biden years went down 4%. That's stunning to even suggest that, but it's true. They went up 8% in Trump 1.0. They went up 4% in the 8 years of Obama. So Trump's real wages were 4 times higher than Obama's. And obviously the Biden real wages were a complete disaster. So that's an average of $3,300 for an average American. We've already recovered $1,200 of that with the real wage growth so far, but we've got to get more of that back. We have to get the other 2/3 back, and maybe even more. If that happens, then we have a great chance in the midterms. And I think it will happen. The liberation of the private sector, especially the energy sector, the deregulation, the tax reform, these things will work. They always have. They worked for JFK. They worked for Reagan. They worked for Trump 1.0, and they'll work again. So I'm very optimistic, and we're seeing it already. Inflation came out this morning at 2.7%. So, we're well below the average of the Biden years, which was 7% over his 3-year, his final 3 years. I don't really count the first year, but we're seeing that trend already because of the Trump economic policies. So we should see a real, and as Angie pointed out, I don't really care that much about GDP growth because we had plenty of that with the Biden years, not as good as Trump, but you did have 2+% GDP growth, but that was because of the reckless government spending. That was all stimulus from borrowed money and the taxpayer. What we're seeing now is a recovery in the private sector, which is much better in terms of outcomes. So as long as we see the growth continue, but more importantly, wage growth, that's the real key here.
Yeah, and Angie, do you see, and I don't know whether you have any anecdotes from the state where you live, Florida, are you seeing that sense of life is becoming a little bit more affordable now, having been expensive for a number of years? Are you seeing that? And do you see that continuing to the extent that it will have to win the GOP, the House and the Senate in the midterms?
Yeah, not yet, unfortunately. Remember, every consumable goods that we have in 2025 it was purchased 6 to 12 months ago, right? So we haven't really seen the Trump tariffs kick in. We don't know what that really looks like. Yeah, we've seen gas prices dip and egg prices back to, reasonable numbers. But the reality is insurance is still very high. Mortgages are still quite high. It's very difficult to even purchase a car because of car insurance and all these other things. So those need to come back down. Now, we've seen President Trump work very hard bringing down popular medicine prices down, having the favorable nations prices and things, but it takes time. So I'm going to be a little bit more reserved on my economic outlook for 2026. I want to see what quarter 1 and quarter 2 looks like, because if it's not felt felt in Americans' pocketbooks, that is going to certainly affect how we vote in November. And, I don't know if we have enough time to really bring everything down, because I think, as Greg said earlier, these economic plans take 9 to 12 months to really kind of come to fruition. And we're butting up right next to November at that point. So I think by June of next year, 2026, if we're not really seeing those cost savings and our insurance, I think that's the key word here. If our insurance premiums are as high as they are, Americans are still borrowing to just live a comfortable life. I would like to see those go down. I think President Trump has a plan for it. I have yet to see it yet, but that's what I'm looking forward to. It's actually just those normal monthly payments go down for everyone.
Okay, I know neither of you has a crystal ball, but just looking forward to some foreign policy issues in 2026. I mean, perhaps more of the same of what we've seen in 2025, Ukraine, Gaza, Venezuela, and perhaps, the occasional spark between the United States and Europe. What would be your predictions, Greg?
Yeah, I think you're right, Tom. It might be pretty much the same. You'll see a stronger NATO because of what President Trump has done over both of his terms, and obviously much more of a commitment from the NATO countries to hit their 5% of GDP. I'm not sure that they are capable of that, given that they're all, for the most part, especially the Western European countries, have really become welfare states. So I don't know how they're going to hit that 5% number, but you will see it from Poland and some of the other Eastern European countries. So that's good news. I think you'll see regime change in Venezuela. That could come at any moment. I know that Maduro has talked to Belarus. I'm sure he's talked to the Russians about some sort of exit strategy for him. I hope that happens rather than any escalation in armed conflict. And then of course you'll see this pivot to Asia continue. And so I think these are all positive things that started in the first year, and I think they'll continue into 2026.
Angie, just picking up on Venezuela, I mean, some analysts, and I think it was in fact the president of Belarus, who said that Venezuela risked becoming the next Vietnam. I mean, clearly the GOP does not want that in a midterm election year.
No, and we definitely do not want boots on the ground in Venezuela. I think that would be a terrible thing to do, especially in a midterm year. Look, Maduro's getting squeezed. He knows his time is up. President Trump has already given him an exit window for him and his family and close allies. Maduro's asking the UN Security Council to jump in. So he knows he's out of room there. And it's just a matter of time before there is regime change. And so I look forward to that as well. I'm also looking forward to the U.S.-China meeting in April of 2026. I think that is going to resolve a lot of the tensions that we're facing right now. A lot of U.S. companies are not making major purchases as well as hires because of that meeting. We need to see that that is going to be stable before there's more job hiring. So I think that's something to look forward to. I'm also keeping a really close eye on this new alliance between Modi, Xi Jinping, Putin, and others. They were playing games in 2025. They were trying to troll Trump, which I found quite funny. But at the same time, I get it. It's a new alliance that's been formed there that is a very anti-Trump alliance, I feel. So I'm keeping an eye on how that looks like, because Apple, one of our largest companies here in the U.S., is decided to do packaging and manufacturing in India. So, we're all connected somehow. It's whether or not, President Trump can get the best and squeeze the best out of what we can get for Americans and get the best pricing around the world versus a lot of these kind of hard diplomacy policies that he's put into place. I'd like to see him continue with it, because I can't see any other president fighting for us as hard as he has around the world.
And Greg, I know in previous conversations we've talked about how, there's been a lot of activity on the foreign policy front from this Trump administration. But to what extent does a foreign policy issue win votes in a midterm election? And if the answer is not much, do you think we're going to see a pivot away from perhaps deals that just aren't forthcoming? Perhaps President Trump will just say, look, no deal to be found here. Let's move on and focus on issues closer to home. Do you think we're going to see a bit of that in 2026?
Well, for sure, you're going to see the pivot on the messaging and the focus. It doesn't mean he'll ignore foreign policy, but I think he will talk about it less and he'll focus much more on domestic issues. So, that's how you win elections. The voters just don't really care about foreign policy when it comes to the voting booth. And so you'll see the messaging and the focus be on domestic issues. As Angie said earlier, prices, people still feel like they're hurting, right? Because, the grocery prices are up 25% thanks to Joe Biden. And there's a lot of work to do there. And so even though their real wages are up slightly, it's not enough to recover from the damage done in the prior administration. So I think you'll see a lot of focus on that, and that's how you win elections. There are exceptions. I think George W. Bush in 2002 was on the heels of 9/11, so there was a lot of positive momentum in terms of support for him. He was polling at 80 in late 2001 and early 2002. And so you could say the same for George H.W. Bush in his midterm elections. And then it can turn around quickly, both positively or negatively. But right now, I think it's all about the economy. And as I've mentioned before, Reagan was polling at 35 in January of 83, and he won 49 states less than 2 years later. So if we see some real positive wage growth so that consumers don't feel the pain anymore. And by the way, they're spending money. And that's what's interesting. Even though the consumer sentiment is lower, according to the polls, well, of course it is, because they're told by the mainstream media every day how bad things are because of the evil President Trump. So the TDS has an influence on people, and yet those same voters are actually spending a lot. So the retail sales are up, yet consumer sentiment is down. It doesn't make sense, but I think if President Trump and the administration focus on affordability and they turn the corner, then good for us in the midterms.
Right, and just one poll I've got for you is that another Reuters Ipsos poll says that 33%, that's a low number, of US adults approve of President Trump's handling of the economy. So clearly some hard work is needed in the coming months to turn that around, if indeed you believe those numbers. We don't have too many dates we can be sure of in 2026. We've agreed on the midterms. That's definitely going to happen. Another thing that's definitely going to happen is that there will be consideration for the 2026 Nobel Peace Prize. And obviously, President Trump didn't win in 2025. Angie, do you think he'll get the 2026 Peace Prize?
Well, I know he's been nominated, and many people have. I don't know if he should even focus on this. I mean, the Nobel Peace Prize is quite antiquated. I know plenty of people involved in the process. It's not just so much that someone could just nominate him and he gets it. It's a full process where they send a team to assess what's going on. They talk to your friends, your neighbors. They walk around with you. It's a big process to actually get the prize. I'm certain that there's no other living person on earth that deserves the Nobel Peace Prize more than Trump does. I know he tried hard for it. I know that's a goal of his. And certainly world leaders, business leaders, everyone is nominating him. So I hope they do. The committee does sit up and listen. But again, I actually like the fact that he won this FIFA Peace Prize. I was not very happy about it when he first got it. I thought it was just such a throwaway story. But what better way of uniting nations than through soft power and sports, right? So I thought that was a great little throwaway. So he is getting recognition all over the place, maybe not from Oslo, but I certainly think he doesn't need the prize to know that he is the peace president.
Greg, let me put that to you as well. What are your thoughts with regards to the 2026 Nobel Peace Prize? Do you think President Trump will want to keep foreign policy very much on a front burner so he stands a better chance?
No, I don't think so, Tom. Look, he'll focus on domestic issues. That's how you're going to win the midterms. That's for sure. He deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. Whether he'll get it is a different question. I think a lot of people on the committee, a lot of the sort of Western European diplomatic crowd really have Trump derangement syndrome. It would really freak them out to give the prize to this president. I hope he gets it, but I don't think it's a big issue. You've got the 250th anniversary of America coming up. You've got the World Cup. I think and of course the focus on the economy.
You mentioned the World Cup. That is the only other date I can offer you that we're sure about for the year 2026. Angie, how much excitement is there about the fact that the United States is co-hosting the World Cup together with Canada and Mexico? It's going to be the largest World Cup in history, we're told.
I love it. I love every minute of it. I welcome Scotland versus Brazil to come to Miami next June. So, no, I think this is a great, great event, and it brings all of these nations together. It's the best soft power convention I can think of. And I love that President Trump is all over it. He's going to be attending all the games. It is just such a feel-good event, and it's really great to be hosting all these nations. And just forgetting about wars and economy and all the bad stuff for a while. We've had so much heaviness for so long, so many years, that it's nice to just celebrate with other world leaders over sports. I don't know a thing about football, but I will certainly have to learn in the next coming months, because certainly this is going to involve a lot of politics in these games.
Yeah, Angie, I don't think you're alone, because football is not the first sport you think of when you think about the United States, or soccer as you call it over there. Greg, I mean, this is a real opportunity, isn't it, though? Because it is a hugely popular sport around the world, growing in popularity as well in the United States. This is an opportunity, isn't it, to show the world what America in 2026 looks like.
Yeah, it really will be. And this is a great opportunity for the country, to host. We did it in 1994, but in many ways that was an introduction of football to the American audience. People play it here especially when they're young children, both boys and girls play it as kind of a development sport, but they typically don't stick with it. At least that was the case prior to 94. Now it's a different story. I think most young men have a football team that they follow in the English Premier League, and women are crushing it with soccer, as we call it here in America. The American women's team has won 4 World Cups. It's extremely popular with young women playing football in high school and college. And so it's a big deal here, a much bigger deal than it was in 1994. So this will be a great opportunity, a great showcase for the country.
Yeah, and as you both said, I mean, President Trump really all over this story, and he's been mingling with a few football players lately in the Oval Office. Let's look towards 2028. This has already come up once in our conversation, but it's not far off. Is there an heir apparent to President Trump, assuming he doesn't go for a third term? Angie, your thoughts?
He's not going to go for a third term. There's no way he can, although it would be fun to see if he tried. I'm not sold on J.D. Vance yet. I'm watching him tour the country. I'm watching him do all those things that you would do to position yourself for a 2028 run, including going to Israel and going to the troops during Thanksgiving, all those things. But I actually think the man who said he's not going to run because J.D. Vance is running is going to run, which is Marco Rubio. I think he is well positioned to take over the top spot. He's well respected. He's actually put America back on the world map to be respected. So I think he is perfectly positioned. He's hiding a little bit to kind of skirt off the attacks. But I love to see that ticket. J.D. Vance, again, I will be optimistic for him. But right now, there was a poll that came out very, very recently. J.D. Vance versus AOC, and AOC won it. So, yeah, there's going to be certainly interesting polls like that to come out. But I'm looking forward to seeing kind of more seasoned politicians like Marco Rubio. So that's my pick.
Greg, who do you think we're going to be seeing more of in 2026, with a view to eventually taking over leading the charge for the Republican Party?
Well, for sure in 26, you'll see a lot of J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio. They're the natural heirs to the Trump presidency. But don't forget about Ron DeSantis and the governor of Florida, who's done an incredible job in Florida. He won his re-election in the last midterms by 20 points. And this is a state that, was considered a swing state only a decade ago. And so he's really moved the state to the right. He's done an incredible job as governor. He ran for president against Trump in the 24 cycle. And, prior to the raid on Mar-a-Lago, he was down 5 points, 9 points to President Trump. After the raid, he was down 39. And then, of course, in the spring of 24, he was almost even with President Trump in the polls. And then they started the indictments, especially the Alvin Bragg indictment in New York, and President Trump jumped 30 points again. So, this is someone who's run before. Historically, Republicans always have to run 1 or 2 times for the nomination to actually get it. You saw that with Mitt Romney. You saw that with President Trump. You saw it with Reagan even, who had to run several times, Nixon. So historically, with the exception of George W. Bush, it's always someone who's run before. So I think I wouldn't count out Ron DeSantis.
Okay, just remind us what happened. So after the midterm elections, does the whole world, basically, does the whole of the United States political universe switch their attentions, therefore, to the next presidential election? Is that basically how it happens, Angie? Everyone goes straight from the outcome of the midterms and focus all their efforts and attentions on what's going to happen in 2 years from then?
Yeah, we don't get a break at all, Tom. So yeah, we're already slipping into the 2028 election. We're already positioning various states so that we can secure wins. Right now, we're spending way too much money state by state on the municipality and kind of like the state legislature level to ensure that there's going to be a Republican win in 2028. We thought we had shored that up with President Trump, but President Trump is a very special political animal. People love to rage vote for him. We saw that in November of 2024. People could not wait to get out and vote for President Trump. We need the same energy in 26 and 28 to get out the vote for a Republican candidate. And we need to ensure that. And we need to go through every single line, whether it's state legislature races, redistricting, getting our donor base engaged with the next issues of the day. There's a lot of work to be done. We're starting today. I'm not waiting until after the midterms. We need to get things going now and prepare the right candidates and prepare the money. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Okay, well, we've said there are some things we're not completely sure about. They're going to happen in 2026, but one thing we can be sure of is we'll be speaking to both of you as the year goes on and discussing all of the political goings-on in the United States here on Al Arabiya English. Thank you very much indeed to you both. Angie Wong, Republican strategist from Florida. Thank you very much to you. Greg Swenson, Chair of Republicans Overseas. Thank you for joining us from Washington, D.C. Really appreciate your contributions today and throughout the course of 2025. Thank you both very much indeed.
Happy
Thank
holidays.
you, Tom. Merry Christmas.
Well, that is all we have time for on Global News today. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Be sure to join us again next year for more exclusive interviews. Until then, goodbye.